Hey friends, welcome to another episode of the Color of Money podcast. I am your girl, Julia Lachey, and today I got my brothers, Bo and Daniel. Yes, I'm going to say it, my two favorite co-hosts, because I said that last week when you weren't on, Daniel. So I have to say it this week too. But today, friends, we are in for a good conversation. Bo and I are actually going to talk to Daniel about how to finish the year strong. So we're recording this in November of 2025. People are kind of getting ready for goal setting and business planning for the next year. But I thought we should probably stop and focus on what should we be finishing up for this year, specifically as it relates to kind of getting our wealth goals in shape, preparing for our taxes, closing the year with really strong intention. And there is nobody better to talk to about that than Daniel. Daniel is, I call my finance connoisseur. Is that the word? Connoisseur, finance guy, right? Daniel's all things finance. If you aren't familiar with who Daniel is a powerhouse real estate industry professional all throughout the country, but specifically he's located in Denver, Colorado. He is the operating principal, meaning he owns the franchise in Denver, Colorado, the KW franchise. He also has a huge team, $1 million team called the Dixon Group, right? It's still called the Dixon Group?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, the Dixon Group. And Daniel, I always tell people the example of how Daniel gets paid several times on one transaction because Daniel owns the mortgage company. Daniel also owns the title company. He's a branch manager, actually, for Cross Country Mortgage. And he has a title company called Legacy Title. So all the things, he knows how they all work together and how they all play together and things you should do and shouldn't do. In fact, Daniel's doing a refinance for me right now and called me up. It's like, here's the thing. Let me tell you how you structured this all wrong, right? So Daniel is going to help all of us today talk about how do we do that in preparation for the year end. So, Daniel, hi.
Thank you. That was nice. That's probably the nicest things you've said about me in a while. I appreciate it. Including yelling at me about your refi.
Oh my gosh. You know, you have to explain things to me. You all know how this podcast goes. You start talking over my head and I'm like, wait, break it down. Daniel sent me a text. I misunderstood it and I went off, totally off. I misunderstood it. But Daniel, you have built multiple businesses and helped countless families, including mine, grow wealth through real estate. As we close out the year, what do you think people should be focusing on financially?
I think there's a lot of ways to think about it. And I think what it really starts with is truly just reflection. What happened this year? What went well? What didn't go well? Where are my finances at? Through the transparency and through the reflection of what everything looks like really allows us to be able to start understanding, where do I want to go? We can't identify where we want to be if we don't really understand where we're actually at. And so as we wrap up the year, I think it's important to go backwards and look at everything. Look through your financial statements every month. Look at your P&L. Go through your expense loads, your debt to income ratios, your personal finances. Oftentimes in our industry, the last 2 years have been really difficult for a lot of us. And what I've seen a lot of agents do is they just kind of turn a blind eye to the things that matter most, which is really understanding what's happening with the numbers. They're not pretty, so I don't want to look at them. It's kind of what it is, right?
I can totally relate, Daniel. That's been big on my mind. Is like when things shift. I think we all have this at least for me, I like numbers, but I don't live in numbers all day long. And when things start to go bad, I think a lot of times we hang on saying, okay, it's just I'm gonna make it through this patch and it's gonna change. And I know that for me, one of my reflections on 2025 is to be faster to getting right about the fundamental structural changes that are necessary in the numbers I'm looking at to make them work.
I like to give the example of like when we grew up, I grew up with a single mother of 3 kids. We didn't really have much forever. And all the collection bills would always just pile up. Like there's no reason to open it because I don't have any money to pay for it. And unfortunately, we duck our head in the sand as agents if we're not having a good year or a good month or whatnot. And we don't pay attention because we get discouraged or get down instead of looking at the numbers as telling a story and really being able to see the truth. And we can only create change when we actually understand what the truth is and not just, we love looking at our bank accounts and managing money after a good month.
So, but how do you, for specifically real estate agents and any entrepreneur really, when you look at those numbers, there is a big difference between profit and revenue. And a lot of times we're just looking at the revenue, but how should people be evaluating their profit versus all of the money that came in? Because just because you brought money in doesn't mean you actually made a significant profit.
I think it's the biggest issue in our industry is we determine our worth based on our gross commission income, not our net income or what we're actually keeping, right? And so I think what everyone needs to start with is really isolating and putting your business in an actual business. So you have your LLC, you have your S corp, whatever that is, and that business is paying you a salary every month. And so when we look at using a bookkeeper like we have that are running P&Ls for us every month, or you're just using QuickBooks, we can't commingle the funds because we can't see correctly. We can't see clearly. If everything's coming out of one account and that's just my bank account, we don't really understand what's happening in our business. We're using the business to fund our lifestyle, which is kind of what it should be. But the more disciplined that we can be in understanding where the money is and what it's interesting when when you're broke, you have the things that you want are not magnified, right? Like I just want to get out of being broke. And then you have a bunch of money in your account. And you have all these new wants, and it happened overnight. And you're like, where did this come from? I didn't care about that new pair of shoes yesterday, but now I got all this money in my account. So I think the more that we separate the money, the more we can truly identify what is our business doing. Is our personal life out of whack? What I see a lot of agents doing, they have their business completely tight and their personal life is completely out of whack. And so they keep borrowing from the business to fund their lifestyle, and they have no idea what's happening in their personal lives. So it's really just transparency, whether it's good or whether it's bad. It's identifying and siloing everything.
When you say they have no idea what's going on in their personal lives, what do you mean by that?
So we run P&Ls, we run business audits, we goal set, we goal plan, we look at P&Ls for our business. And then in our personal life, we just spend freely. And so for some reason, we're making money in the business, but we're living closing to closing. And it's only because you're spending too much in your personal life and you don't have a hold of it. Every time my wife's nickname is over budget, because every project we do, she's over budget on it. So trying to get her to understand how do we finances are not her strength, but we need to hold it accountable. Because we have X amount of money in an operating account doesn't mean that we can spend frivolously over here on this other side in our personal life.
That is so good. And the reason I asked you to clarify that was because, of course, I run a P&L on my personal business. So I'm always in my business account, always in my business credit card, running those numbers. But when I finally went to look at my personal account, I was like, what the hell? and by the way, somebody was ordering DoorDash 2 times a week for like 6 months on my card. I had no idea I never even looked. And so now I'm trying to get money back from DoorDash. Like I did not spend $1,000 in DoorDash. Somebody did. And I would never look at that. And then it makes sense like why I feel like I never have no money. But that's why I asked because I think a lot of us do that. Yeah.
We catch them sometimes in the business P&L because we're forcing ourselves to look at every little detail. But on the personal level, I don't know. I just wake up and think, okay, I got my mortgage. I got these big payments. I got these things for my kids. And then I forget like, oh, well, I signed up for all this other junk.
Mm-hmm. So do you think we should run a P&L in our personal accounts?
100%. We had, about probably like 2 months ago, my son was home and he wanted to order food. And he's like, can I get DoorDash or whatever? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. And I look at the charge later and it was like $42 just for him. Yeah. And I'm like, and so we had a really tough conversation that day. Like, just because we have it doesn't mean we need to spend it. Like $40 just for you to eat lunch is absolutely absurd. But unless we're uncovering it and teaching the lessons, we're just going to keep swiping the card, and we don't exchange cash anymore. So we have this fallacy of we just charge it or swipe the card or use this digital currency thing, and we don't. It's different when you're giving a $20 and only getting $2 back. You spent $18. Wait, I wasn't really. I thought I'd have more money than this. So it's interesting the dynamic with digital currency and kind of the way that we see the world now.
Especially when your credit card is saved on all the things. Like I can go on Amazon and just click, 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 click. I don't even put my credit card number in. They know what it is. I drove into a parking ramp and it automatically swiped my card. Like it already knew by my license plate number what my card number was. I was like, what the hell? So you don't even need a card anymore to spend money.
Well, one of the tricks that I do probably every month, every couple of weeks, is I'll lock all of my credit cards because I don't want that subscription just renewing. I want to control what I'm approving and not just letting everything on auto debit. So every couple of weeks,
good.
I'll just pause it just to kind of give a breath, settle my wife down a little bit, see kind of where we're at, and then create the path forward. Because if there's no awareness and there's no like sight into it, it just this is how we get in debt and why credit card balances are at an all-time high right now.
So Dale, sort of shifting gears, as you think about like these core indicators, when you sort of look at it in its whole, are there specific metrics that you assess for your business and for your life? Like, what are the key, if we're trying to create the scoreboard, like what's your scoreboard? Like, how do you know whether you're winning or losing, and what do you track and in what intervals?
So for the business, everything is like net profit. So what are we actually keeping in our accounts? So we have everything coming. We have all the expenses coming out of the business accounts. We get the P&Ls every month. We move money over and so on. So that's pretty easy to see. Gross revenue minus expenses equals net revenue. Then now as a net revenue is getting swept into an investment account, into a whole life policy, into a distribution of some sort to buy investment properties. That's kind of the thought process I have. So the more that we can silo these things, so there's a good book. I can't remember the name of the book, but he talks about, it's called Profit First. And this was the concept of taking your closing and moving your closing into 5 different buckets. You have your tax bucket, you have your whatever spending bucket, you have your operating expense, you have your tiding, if you or contribution of sorts, and I can't remember the other bucket. It's another bucket that's like a miscellaneous bucket. But when we see a $10,000 closing check, and you are disciplined to move the money around, then all these buckets will slowly grow over time. And we're not making $10,000, $15,000 a closing. We're getting paid like an actual employee of our own business. And so it's this mindset shift that has to happen with agents to turn, or from business owners for the matter, to turn from I get all the GCI, I get all the commission, to I'm an employee of my business and here is my wage that I'm making for my business.
So one of the things you point out, which I think is so powerful, is that some people have massive discipline around money and they segment stuff they measure. I was actually never that. This is all about the path of money. This is about the path of money. And I think what Daniel's pointing out to us is that how your money flows actually matters, and the order in which it flows matters a lot. So yes, you could hope that you put all your money in an account and you're very disciplined about only spending this much on food and this much on clothes. But most people aren't. Most people spend, right? And our world's set up today to just spend. So part of it is about segmenting into buckets so that your bucket actually runs out, and actually knowing that this bucket always gets filled. Because what would happen is people put all their money. Most people get that commission check. It comes into their bank account, and all their stuff, their DoorDash, their mortgage, their living expenses come out of that. And at the end of the day, they're like, oh, well, how much do I have left? And if I have something left, I'll save it or I'll invest it. And Profit First is all about, it matters what order you do things in. It matters in the flow of money. If you thought about money like water, you want a little bit of that stream to get siphoned off before it gets to the main thing, or else it gets wasted. And that's actually the exercise of how you create discipline. And, in my life, it was a lot about, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about brands here, but Capital One, if you actually have some real money, you can't get your money out of Capital One. Like, it's impossible to get this bank to get your money out. They make you, if the wire's over a certain amount, they make you jump through 1,000 hoops. And it's literally so painful. So I literally started an account there, and I would put my money, my savings money would go there, because I knew even on a rainy day, it was such a pain in the butt to get it. If I had to drive to a darn bank and take it out, I was never going to do that. And so that money became safe, right? So think about the buckets and how you access the buckets and what order they go in, and which one you put first, right? And which one you put second, and what comes third is really important as we think about this flow of money question.
One of the biggest things that we should all be doing is understanding. I keep talking about transparency and understanding the numbers. What does it cost for us to live? And what does it cost for my business to go? Those are two things that we need to understand. So my operating expense bucket needs to build with what does it cost for my business to go each and every month? And then my personal life, what are all of my absolute expenses, my mortgage, my car payments, my credit card payments, whatever those things are. And then once we understand the numbers, then we have to create an S corp to pay yourself an hourly or pay yourself a monthly wage that matches your burn rate of your personal life, that is tied to your operating expense bucket. And that way, whether you have one closing in a month or you have 10 closings in a month, you're getting paid what it costs for your life to live, for you to live your life. And now the excess money now goes into other buckets for investment or growth, or
assuming there's excess money.
Assuming there's excess money, correct? But you got to even you have to establish the. I mean, one of my favorite memories when I first was licensed and making a bunch of money is I would go to the bank and cash my checks. As I was doing none of this profit first stuff, and I would get a bunch of like $200-$300 in ones, and this is when we were doing in bold. You're a money magnet. And so I'd get the ones and I'd go home with my kids. They were 3 and 5, and we'd throw the ones in the air. We'd have so much fun with closings, and we'd have a really, really good time. But the problem was all of my money kept going out really, really fast. So when I started learning this concept, I didn't have all the reserves to go get all the buckets and get this bank with this bucket. But you got to establish the buckets. And the buckets will stay empty for a while. But once you have the knowledge and the experience with the different accounts and buckets and moving the money, then they will slowly start growing over time, because you're always going to feel like you need to continue to sell houses because you always feel somewhat broke because you're being responsible. You know the amount of agents that have, and including myself at one point, that have tax debt? And this is the reason we have tax.
Go there next with our conversation. Yeah,
we have tax debt because we deposit that money in our checking account. We go spend it, and we'll deal with taxes later when it's time to do taxes. When I punt it to next October 9th before the deadline, when I file my taxes and get my $35,000 tax bill, right?
I feel attacked. But Daniel, so let's talk about that.
It was me too, though.
No, let's talk about that, preparing for taxes as we approach the year. Because like I said, we're recording this in November. You know, it's about to be the end of the year. Are there any strategies now that people should be and could be looking at to kind of prepare yourself, or maybe deductions that they should be looking at, or things we should be doing before December 31st? And before you answer, I know they already have the whole disclaimer on before the music comes on for the podcast. We are not financial advisors. Right. We are not attorneys. We are not any of those things. We just work with those people. And anyways, proceed, just so nobody tries to sue you if what you tell them doesn't work right.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things. We think about retirement accounts. Retirement accounts, SEP IRAs, 401ks. If you're paying yourself through your business, through your S corp, you can have money taken out of that to go to one of your retirement accounts that reduces your tax liability. So that's one of the easiest ones that helps you save for future retirement or just having your money in the market and growing. The second one is a health savings account, and you have these out-of-pocket maxes that you can contribute to these programs that can pay for medical expenses. Some of them can pay for massages. Some of them, I had some people do some crazy stuff and try to get ice baths paid for, saunas at their house and things like that. So it's super creative on what you can the chiropractor, different everyday things that we use or go to Walgreens for should be coming out of that account, because that account is tax deductible. So the idea is, how do we take our top line number and continue to shrink that number so our bottom line net revenue or adjusted gross income number is whittled down so our tax liability is smaller? The third thing is, any of us that own rental property is thinking about cost segregation. This is my favorite tax strategy out of everything that I've ever done, because it's true. It's the double dipping, right? If we take our gross income down from 100,000 down to 30,000 with expenses or deductions, then when you get ready to go buy a house, as a lender, I can only qualify you off of that $30,000. Where if we have rental properties and we're able to use cost segregation and accelerated depreciation, we can take that 100,000 in revenue, take the depreciation back to that same number of 30,000 in the example, And so my tax liability is only on $30,000 of revenue. But then when I go qualify for a home, as a lender, I'm adding back all of that depreciation into your income. So now I'm qualifying you at 100,000. So it's the only thing in our world for the most part that gives us the shelter from tax liability and then also the benefit of qualifying income on the other end. It's huge. So looking at these aspects right now and understanding what can I do as we approach year end, it's still my first time understanding this. Is like year 2 in the business. We were able to flip my LLC into an S corp because we were still close to year end, take a distribution, and then have me recognized as an S corp that tax year. So I saved money on what I should have paid in taxes because of the strategy that my CPA identified, which is huge.
Well, I was going to add 2 things to this. Just Daniel covered all these things that happen at the end of the year. I just want to throw 2 other ones out there as he's walking through that. One is charitable giving. You have an opportunity to make charitable gifts before the end of the year. And so when you think about your giving plan and how you do that, the timing of that giving can have a big impact on your overall tax liability. So thinking about where are you at in your overall income and where you might want to do before the end of the year. And the last one is realizing, Daniel talked a little about depreciation, cost segregation. There's also the question of when do you realize capital gains. And so for those of you who might have a stock portfolio or a stock account, like when you actually make those trades has an impact on your taxable income.
Yeah.
So if you're having a really bad year this year, but your stock portfolio is really up, this might actually be an interesting time to execute some trades that you would have to pay taxes on that would then fall in this year against your lower taxable income rather than next year.
Well, let's talk about that too, because we do a lot of things, as small business owners, entrepreneurs, to reduce our taxable income so that we don't have to pay this high amount of taxes. What the challenge is kind of like a candle at both sticks, because then when you go to buy some properties, is what I ran into when Daniel was trying to help me. Now I don't have any money because I had deducted everything I could possibly think of under the sun. And now they're using an income that's not necessarily sufficient for what you're trying to buy. So how do we balance that, Daniel? How did you balance that, Daniel?
So, it's a tricky thing. So it's not even just real estate agents. Any business owners that I work with or originate loans for, I love. My NMLS ID number is 8017. So I was licensed doing mortgages back in like 2008 before the market crashed. So I like to think of myself as more of a finance guy before a real estate agent. And so when we're talking to business owners, oftentimes we've got to get together and have this If you think you want to buy a house next year, and this is our conversation, Julia, you want to buy a house, or you want to sell a house and buy a house, or you want to invest, anything like that, but you know that you have tax returns in which we use to determine your income, we've got to get together prior to filing taxes to understand what is the number, what is the target number we need to be showing on paper in order for you to achieve your goal of homeownership or investment properties or what have you. There's other non-traditional products we can use, non-QM loans we call it, where we're talking about investment properties. But your CPA's job every year is to reduce your tax liability. That is what you're paying them to do. But if you're not having the conversation with them that you want to go buy a house next year for your family, we're over here having to amend taxes and have this back and forth. And you make $100,000 a year, but you can only buy a $150,000 condo because you're not showing anything on paper. So the strategy and the projection of what we want to achieve in that goal is incredibly important to how we actually execute that as we head into 2026 and goal set of the things that we want to accomplish professionally and personally in our lives.
Because I'll do it very differently now before the end of the year than I did at the end of last year because, Daniel's like, it's a problem. Good job. Reduce your taxable income. Bad news. You don't make any money. Yeah. So I'll do it differently before this year is over. For the last part of this conversation, why don't we talk about how we can actually set some financial goals for 2026? We had a guest on last week, or maybe for you all would have aired 2 episodes ago, that made a comment that was pretty interesting to us because Daniel and I don't know how you feel about it, Bo, but Daniel and I, like, goal setting is our jam. I love goal setting.
Yeah.
And what did she say, Daniel, that made us kind of perk our ears up?
She said that your goals is a limiting belief. She doesn't goal
Yes.
set at all. Your
Yeah.
goals are a limiting belief. And
And
that
that's different than how we think of things.
oh my goodness. Like if you set a goal for the year and you achieve your goal, you feel successful. And her mind was like, no, there's so much more you left on the table because you set that limiting belief on what that goal was. And it's
Yeah.
it's the books that we've read. It's the 10x book. It's the I can't think of the other book right now. That just talks about completely increasing like shoot for the moon and you'll end up at the stars
Yeah.
rather than setting a goal that I feel good that I can achieve and then get there and feel good about myself. But we're only scratching the surface of what we're actually capable of.
I think it's an amazing concept, right? Like a while ago, I got this triangle of goals because I was getting really frustrated in my organization because we had a couple of leaders. I called them sandbaggers. Like it was really important to them to hit their goal. So they would always set these very low goals and it would drive me nuts, right? And then I would always set these really high goals. People, Bo's goals are BS, right? And so I saw this little triangle and I've been using it ever since, which is like there's a sort of hierarchy of goals. And I started asking people to tell me what type of a goal it is. And at the bottom level, I thought of it as these are, at the bottom level is I promise. The next level is I know, I think, I hope, I pray. I promise, I know, I think, I hope, I pray. And I started asking people, what type of goal is it?
That's good.
Is this an I promise goal?
That's so good.
Meaning like, are you telling
That's so
me
good.
that if you don't hit this goal, you shouldn't work in this company anymore? Or you're not
Yeah.
going to have this job? Is this an I know? Like, I know, I bet myself on it. I know we're going to get this. We're going to get there. I'm confident in it. Is it I think? Like, this is a reasonable, logical goal. It makes sense, but there's a chance we couldn't hit it, right? Is it, an I hope goal? Like, it's possible. Like, if we performed really well, we'd get there. We'd get it. We'd nail it. Or is it I pray? Like, yeah, it'd be nice to hit this goal someday, but it's out there and I just want to kind of shoot for it because it's going to take me the direction of this. And, maybe if everything, all the constellation of stars align, we'll get there. But I realized that people set goals from their own perspective. And when we come to a conversation about goals, some people are coming from an I know place. Some are coming from a hope, I think, I pray. And the reality is in a business, you need to budget from an I promise or an I know place. But you're a horrible leader of people if you every year give them I promise, I know goals, and that's the only goals they have. Because human growth comes for stretching for goals that are outside of our reach. So when we stretch for that, I think, I hope, I pray goal, we grow and we evolve. And so I've always tried to use that framework to acknowledge that as a business person, we need to budget and run a company off of I promise and I know goals. But as a group, especially of salespeople or people that are in business development or building something, we need to be operating at least in the I hope or like kind of range or think I hope kind of level of goals.
We underestimate what we can do in 5 years or 10 years, but we overestimate what we can do in 12 months. And so you have to have these goals on all these different sheets. And like, here's the 3-year goal and the 1-3-5 on how we get to the 3-year goal. And that's different from the 12-month goal and the 90-day sprints that we're doing. But if you have that hierarchy, your 3 or 5-year goal can be on the I hope or I pray. And you can still look at it every single day, but knowing that the business needs to be living in the I promise or I know areas and making sure that we at minimum, that is where our floor lies. That's so cool. That's so cool.
So how do we apply that to setting financial goals? What do you think would be the best way to set financial goals that have for them to actually get achieved? We want to have the I promise, the I know, I think, I hope, I pray. How do we use that framework to set financial goals?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I feel like it's still kind of a number that we pull out of the air. But what I would encourage everybody to do is pull that number out of the air and what that financial goal is for next year and tie it to something that means something. I want to make $100,000, which is every real estate agent's goal when they get into real estate ever. But what are we doing with 100? Like, how is that going to impact your life, and how can we tie it to something that's emotional? If we can tie emotions to the goals, then we show up every day with a different level of effort and intention than if we just pull a number out of the air and say, this is the goal because I'm capable of it. Or I'm talented enough to hit that, or I did that last year, so I should be able to at least hit that this year. Put the money in and tie it to something that means something to make what you're doing every day worthwhile.
And that meaning, right, attaches to a mindset or a logic of how you got that goal. So if there's a certain amount of money, if I wake up every day and I look at my personal budget, and there's a certain amount of money that I need to keep a roof over my head, to feed my children, and to sort of make it through the day, then that has to be an I promise goal. Because if I don't deliver that, there's a negative consequence for the people I love.
That's right.
Right? And so that's a different motivation than me sitting down and going, well, I looked at what we did last year. I looked at the market trends. I thought about what's going on. And I think this is a reasonable amount of money for me to make tomorrow. And that's a very different thought process than me saying, I believe I have the talent, the capacity, the relationships to one day make this. And therefore, I hope to make this year. And you know what? I pray that I think I'm going to shoot for it, and I might get out here, and with a little bit of grace from God, I'm going to be at this number. That's a very different psychological process. And one triggers positive association with accomplishment. The other triggers negative associations with responsibility. And you got to think about how that's playing out in your mindset when you set goals.
Well, when you think about a lot of us want to think about what habits do we need to pick up or do differently in order to achieve the goal that we want, when one of the biggest things we can think about is, what do I need to be letting go? What habit do I need to stop doing? It's a lot easier to stop doing something than it is to completely start a brand new thing for yourself. And so what is not serving you? Then if I want to go make this number, then what am I willing to sacrifice to get there? There's too many people in our industry that want the number, but they're not willing to sacrifice their weekends or their work ethic or their grind to be able to go achieve, as we're in one of the toughest markets that we've ever seen. So like, what am I willing to let go of to get what I want on these financial goals? And what am I willing to sacrifice? Time with kids.
That is so. I think and you can use that not just in financial, in anything, particularly because I like health goals. I'll use it as a health goal. I had the same health goal for 5 years. Could not hit it no matter how much exercise I did, no matter how much grass I ate a day, because that's what I felt like at this point. I'm just eating grass and leaves, and no matter how, I just couldn't get it. But you know what it was? What are you willing to stop doing? I stopped eating after 8 o'clock. And it made a world of difference, And so there are certain things, and that's actually my financial challenge, because I'm not making the money I used to make. And I'm also not willing to stop doing the things I did when I made a whole lot more money. And that's a personal challenge I'm struggling with. So I am this weekend going to go through all the things I need to stop doing, because girl, you just do not have it like that anymore. Stop it. Right. Stop it. But that's a lot easier, honestly, than in a market like this. Because I could go out and hustle and do this and do that and do this, all of those things. But there's some simple things I could just stop doing. I could stop using the Amazon because I don't have to put my credit card in. You could stop doing, there's a lot of things we could stop doing that would drastically change the life we want to live. That's good. You all have dropped some good gems today.
And if you're like me and you hate the idea of stopping, which is one of the most powerful. It's one of the most powerful. What Daniel just says is one of the most powerful concepts out there, right? It's really not about what you need to do more of. It's about what you need to stop doing that makes success. And the way I've always had to rationalize that, because my brain struggles with that so much, is I always have to tell myself that there are certain things I have to do that I have to stop doing now, and then I have to earn the right to do them again. And I think one of the biggest challenges that a lot of folks in the industry face right now is we became entitled to a certain level of things that we had.
Absolutely.
And today, your business is not performing at the level that provided those things. So you got to go back. You got to stop doing a lot of stuff in your personal life that you used to do. right? Because I started out with this like powerful, like, I got to make sure I promise to take care of my children and they need to eat. But do my kids really need to eat out 4 times a week?
Right.
Do I really need to live in a 6,000 square foot house? I could still have a house
Yep.
or a roof over my head at 2,000 square feet and be fine. So like, what's my baseline? And can I stop spending on the things in my life that bring me to the baseline? And then how do I earn? Then if you're like me and you don't want to be like, oh my God, it's just a horrible life. You go, okay, well, what do I need to turn on that allows me to then turn back on that other thing? So when I achieve this, I can do this. But what we do is we say, I want to lock in all these expenses up here, and I'm just going to go make the revenue when the revenue hasn't been there. We got to lock
Right.
the expenses in down here, and then you can add them as you pull up the revenue, but go make the revenue first.
The thing you said, though, I don't know if you caught it or not, but you gamified it.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we achieve goals is we gamify it. The way that we say, I'm going to stop doing this, but we're not saying we're not saying you can't have a cheat day. You can't get it back at some point, but what do I have to do to earn it back at some point? Because we're at this sense of entitlement it's the same way when you raise kids. You're getting a little too loose with spending my money. Let's pull this back. You don't need that toy. Go do some dishes, and then we could talk about getting the thing that you want. And it's the same thing that we build in our own lives and in our own worlds. Gamify it. How do we gamify these things and make the risk the reward, make the sacrifice the triumph on the other side? Like, how do we do both?
So as we come towards the end of our time, I want to just ask a question. If I'm listening, or if I'm me, if I'm Julia, and I only had like 15 minutes a day to work on some of these things, because the problem for me, and maybe some of our listeners as well, is that I know these things. I hear you all talking. I've been listening to the podcast for 2 years. I've learned all this information, and then time comes around and I don't have time to do all the things. I knew to pay my taxes. I just didn't have time to talk to if I only have 15 minutes a day to work on this, where do I start? What's the thing I should start doing to start preparing for the end of the year, to start goal setting for next year, just a couple minutes a day?
Look at your actual books. Look at the money. Print out your statements. Go line by line. Get wildly transparent with what happened. There's no right. There's no wrong. There's no guilt. None of that. We just need to get actual facts and then make decisions based on facts. The problem is we don't understand what the facts are. We think we spend this much per month, but it's likely 40% higher than whatever we think we spend. And so it's just getting wildly transparent.
That's good. That's good.
And I think for moving forward, at the beginning, the first of every month, we have a text message that goes out to our brokerage that says, do your P&L, do your burn rate, and update your net worth tracker. Make that appointment every first of the month to sit down and look at last month. And that way you're not sitting here in November having to compile 10 months of stuff, because that's going to take a lot longer than that 30 or 45 minute meeting for yourself and for your family. Treat it like it's a real meeting and not just I'll get to it when I get to it type thing.
That's good. Put it on your schedule, put it on your calendar. So Are there systems or tools that we could use to track this or help us measure these things or track our progress or to help us stay accountable?
There's so many things with AI that's built in now to help us see a lot faster. You could do the old school way and print out your statements and go line by line and calculate manually. You can put all that information into a spreadsheet and use calculations and formulas. You can use something like Mint, QuickBooks. QuickBooks is probably the easiest thing to plug into all of your accounts, but you need to make sure that your business expenses are being done in a different bucket than your personal expenses. Because if everything's commingled, you can't see clear. You can't see clear. You can't make decisions clear.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the key thing is segmentation. If I was to start someplace, that's where I would start. When you get a franchise, one of the wisdoms I learned from owning a Keller Williams franchise, when you buy a Keller Williams franchise, they tell you to set up 4 accounts. You have an escrow account, you have an operating account, a distribution account, and you basically have this commission account. And so these things, in that business, it works that way. But in your life, do you have an operating account for your life? And is that operating account separate from your investment or savings account for your life, right? And maybe I've been thinking about a lot recently that I've got to have an operating bucket for my life. I've got to have a savings, or what I'm calling an off the table bucket for my life. This is like I'm getting scared. So I'm like, this is my like, hide the perishables in the basement and have a store of water. Like this is what happens if everything goes wrong, bucket. And then this is my money for investments and growth and building the thing. So I've got an operating bucket, I've got an investments and growth bucket, and I've got some sort of rainy day, something happens to the world fund. And if you just started simply there, and every month you didn't let the money go into your operating account, you just forced some money into your investment account and into your savings account. If you just did that fundamental thing, and you say, hey, well, my life's too expensive, I can't, great, then put 1% in your investment account and 1% in the other thing, and work up until you're living off of 20% of what you make and 80% is going to those, 40% is going to the buckets, whatever it is, right? But start with the idea that the day $1, some piece of it does not go into your operating account. That to me is the most simple upfront thing that people could do to start changing their financial picture.
Definitely.
That's good stuff. Daniel, any final words before we wrap up?
Just get wildly transparent. There's no guilt. There's no fear. Just go spend the time. Your future is not going to change at the extent that you need it to if you do not know your numbers. Everything in life can be solved with a math problem, but we got to understand what the numbers are so we can solve that problem.
That's awesome. Friends, I don't know about you, but I just got my marching orders. I know exactly what I need to do before the year is over. And I also know how to set myself up for success for next year. And I'm going to start working on that this weekend. Absolutely. I hope you've gotten the same amount of value out of this conversation that I have. You are talking to or listening to two of the most brilliant men in this space, financial space, wealth building space, all of the things. And you got this information for free. Okay, send this podcast episode to everybody you know. I think everybody you know deserves to hear this information today. And also make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can continue to get this valuable information for free every single week here on the Color of Money podcast. Till next week, friends. Thanks for tuning in.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not Keller Williams Realty LLC and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.